Hi, welcome to the small shed. This Saturday I think we all need a bit of a holiday. See you in a minute. Now it's hard to believe, a year ago I was of the opinion that there was a lot of fuss and bother in the world because everyone seemed to be panicking a bit about this coronavirus thing that was going around, and it didn't seem to be affecting anybody in the UK, and I couldn't see what the problem was. Just shows what my judgment's like. As it happened, we were just about at this time off to go off on our holidays, and so as the crisis unfolded we were the other side of the world, blissfully unaware of it. But exactly a year ago today we went around Christchurch on a tram, and it was a nice sunny lovely day. I thought I would show you some of that footage, take you all off with me. A lot of people haven't had a holiday this last 12 months or more, either because they couldn't get out because of lockdowns, couldn't get away, couldn't afford it, all sorts of reasons. We were incredibly fortunate in being able to go away when we did. We were also incredibly fortunate that we got back into the country pretty much the day New Zealand locked down. We got out the country, and the day that England locked down we landed, and we had no disruption along the way, so we got away with that one, I think. But I just had such a great time while we were there, and it was just such a memorable day. I thought it was worth just digging it out and showing you what we did that day. And come with me, have a little bit of a flavour of what life is like on the other side of the world, and a bit of sunshine. Now there's a couple of things to note on this. You might think that the city looks pretty much deserted. It's a city about the same size as Coventry in the UK, and you will note there are very few cars around, very few people around. This is nothing to do with coronavirus, nothing to do with lockdowns. This is what life is like in New Zealand. There are so few people around that you just don't notice any problems at all with driving into a major city and just parking and getting out the car and walking around. That's something we've just lost sight of in this country. It is often said that New Zealand is a bit like England in the 1950s, and in this instance it was very much the case, because what was apparent was that at least 25% of the city still is pretty much derelict land. That's very much like areas of Birmingham and that, where when I was growing up in the early 50s, where you got the bomb sites and just still getting over problems. And it's worth remembering that they went through a pretty major trauma 10 years previously. They lost 185 lives, which again, in a population or a city of only 380 odd thousand, was quite a high proportion. And it's worth remembering that it's left them pretty damaged both spiritually and financially. What they had a few years later was a terrorist attack which took 51 people out as well, and on a small community this sort of has a huge impact. I don't know whether we book in there or whether you just get on the tram, but I think if you go in and book there you'll probably be able to pay with a card better than you could on the tram. Hello.
Hello.
Do we buy tickets in the kiosk?
No, you can buy them on board if you want.
Do you take cards on board?
Yes, we do.
That's brilliant.
So I will come and see you in a minute.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you.
So, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa. Welcome everyone. My name is Brendan, and it's my pleasure to be the driver here for another couple of hours.
Two, please.
Turning out to be quite a lovely day in Christchurch today. Sun's come out, which is always a bonus. So you'll see, of course, the city's in a state of transition from the earthquakes we had back in 2010 and 11. We've had a lot of buildings demolished, a lot of new ones go up. We're very proud of our new central library here, Turanga on the right, and we invite you to go in. There's no charge. Have a look around. You'll see it's very different to the old style libraries with rows and rows of books and people whispering. It's much more interactive. And there's a balcony up on the top floor with a lookout. A great place to have a look out over the central city, and a good place to photograph the Damage Cathedral, which is there on your left. Now, after nearly 10 years of looking like that, it's going to start looking different. In April this year, they embark on a very ambitious restoration program, which will take 7 to 10 years to complete. So we do hope that some of you can come back at some later stage and come into the cathedral when it's finally reopened. This is Tram Stop 2, Cathedral Square. So a little bit of our history in Christchurch. We were founded in 1850. Canterbury Association brought out about 800 people, arriving in December of 1850. Look to the left there, the 4 trees in front of the brick building have the names of all the people at the base of those trees, names, ages and occupations. And in those days, of course, immigrating out here wasn't just as simple as jumping on an aeroplane and packing your bags. Approximately 3 months. I think the first ship arrived in 88 days. And in those days, of course, they weren't like cruise liners. They were old style sailing ships. And from what I've seen, the cabins were pretty cramped and cold. So that was quite an ordeal to get out here, and then many of them had to live in tents and build their own buildings initially. So that's how Christchurch started. Of course, the Maori people, Ngāi Tahu, had lived in this general area for a number of years, a couple of hundred years prior to the Europeans arriving. So we'll look at a little bit of the Maori story as well as we go around. Turning left to Oxford Terrace, statue of Captain Scott, the Antarctic explorer. It was carved by his widow Kathleen. He came to Christchurch on 2 occasions, and he really wanted to be the first man to get to the South Pole. He eventually made it there, but imagine his disappointment when he saw a Norwegian flag flying at the South Pole. It wasn't a good year for Scott as he died on the return journey. And Christchurch, still to this day, a very active place for various Antarctic operations. A number of countries come to Christchurch and then fly down to the ice. So this is tram stop number 3. We call it Mill Island. Used to have an old flour mill there on the right on this island. And the river is called the Avon, or the Otakaro, to the Ngāi Tahu, which means place of play. Also a very important food source for them. And if you like gentle rivers and boats, there are a couple of places you can go for a little bit of a boat ride. We call them punts. They're the old style English flat bottom wooden boats. Tram stop number 9 and number 12. It's a beautiful day for going for a punt ride. This particular street was very badly damaged in that big February 2011 earthquake. For many years the buildings were no good. Had to wait for them to be rebuilt, so we had a temporary shopping centre out here to the right, probably about half the block. It was called the Restart Container Mall. So shipping containers were converted into shops. Actually really did the job very, very well. Nearly 6 years we had it out there, and a little bit sad to see them go really when they finally did. Just shows you what you can do in times of trouble, come up with some clever ideas. Some of the banks even used shipping containers. On the left we've got some beautiful artworks, the beautiful Maori patterns and the colourful concrete wall named Kaleidoscope. This, as we mentioned, is part of our sort of art scene now, with the artists coming out after the earthquakes to lift the mood of the city. If you follow the sport, you'll know we're a bit of a rugby mad country, and we failed in our bid to win the Rugby World Cup again last year. That's the shop there on the right, Champions, where you can get all the rugby jerseys from all the main teams. So it's all pretty much brand new down here, building wise. Most of them only 1 to 2, maybe 3 years at the most. And you'll see some lovely old style architecture coming up here. Just move up a little bit. Just to the right across the street, an early 20th century building. This was a department store. And of course we lost so many buildings in the earthquakes. Around 70% of our inner city buildings are now gone. About 1,200 in total. So some of the building owners and architects came up with a plan to restore the original facades. And very glad they did. There's one there which we just passed. Another one coming up here, the Country Road building. And this is tram stop number 6 here at the crossing. Right outside the very first shop to open after the earthquakes, and that was the H&M there on the right, and that's only just over 2 years ago. Quite a lot of excitement when H&M opened. Nearly 3,000 people outside the door on the first day. For many years I think we had a lot of issues to deal with after the earthquakes, and it seemed to take so long. We wondered if we were ever going to get back on our feet. Just dragged on and on. So when H&M opened, there was quite a bit of excitement and celebration, really. Realising that yes, we would actually get back to normal eventually, but it does take a long time, and the total estimated bill for the rebuild is somewhere up around $40 to $50 billion. So a lot of money gone into this. Here we go, tram stop number 7. So as far as we go in this direction, we'll be driving the tram from the other end now, heading up High Street to stop number 8.
Taller than that, and that's because they weren't that badly damaged in the earthquake. So we've got a couple of like 15, 17 story buildings around that weren't that badly damaged, and they have been repaired and brought up to the new building code. It was cheaper to repair them and build them up than build new ones. But the new ones can only go 28 metres. If we want to be 100% of the building code, our earthquake was a 6.9 on the Richter scale, but it was right underneath and it went up and sideways, and the up and sideways caused the damage. The new building code is designed at 8.5 on the Richter scale gets handled. So the big issue now in building anything in Christchurch is the foundations. And even if you're building a residential property, if you're in there's certain areas, it's what they call everything's zone 1, 2 and 3. If you're zone 3, your foundation costs can add $20,000 to $30,000 for a small unit. But we had so much damage that no one wants to go through it again. They have something called base isolators now. Most of the new buildings have base isolators, and buildings at the top can shift like a metre. Base isolators are basically lead and rubber, and you sit on pads.
So it goes with it.
So it goes with it and shakes, and the whole goal is that it will shake like buggery, excuse the French, but it shakes like anything, and then reverts back.
Hope it works.
Well, I hope it never gets tried.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you've had a couple, haven't you?
Oh, we had lots. We had thousands of earthquakes, but we only had 2 really, or 3, one really, really big one and 2 quite big ones.
And then up here on the left, you can see the damage completed on the other side. There's the damage to the stonework. All the stained glass windows, most of them have been removed, boarded up with plywood. And it's been home to lots of pigeons over the last 9 years or so. So you'll see empty spaces around the city. This one on the left here used to have a hotel, lots of other buildings. And over here on the right is a lovely old building which unfortunately may be waiting many, many years before it gets its earthquake repairs. It's built in the Queen Anne style of architecture, which is quite unusual for Christchurch. And back in the early days, this was our first purpose-built city council offices. Stop number number 9. Here on the bridge, right on top of the Avon River, which to the Ngāi people is known as the Ōtakaro. A lot on offer. The first one is the Christchurch Art Gallery, Te Puna o Waifetu. It's there on the right. And you'll be pleased to know there's no charge to the gallery. They obviously appreciate donations. It's one of the best galleries in New Zealand, I think. So hop off the tram if you get a little bit of time, even if it's only for 15 minutes. You can have a bit of a look through there, come back and catch the very next tram because we're about 15 minutes apart. Beautiful buildings here, one of my favourite parts of the city, the former University of Canterbury campus. Just over 100 years they were here. They needed more room to expand, so they moved out, and it's now home to the Arts Centre, has been for about 40 years or so. So you find lots of neat little shops in there, owner-operated galleries, also the main visitor information centre for our city.
Thank you very much.
You're all good.
Thank
there,
you.
Lovely. So the museum is free entry, open till 5 daily. And next to the Canterbury Museum is the Botanical Gardens. 26 hectares of gardens through there. If you don't feel like walking all the way around, they do have a lovely caterpillar tour, which is a 50-minute tour with full commentary. It's absolutely gorgeous through there, so if you definitely like gardening, it's definitely well worth checking out. Alright, on your right hand side, the building site there is actually going to be a new art gallery homing a private collection of paintings and furniture. To the left hand side is Christ College, one of the oldest independent colleges in the country, founded back in the 1850s. 650 students attend the college. So back into the Cathedral Junction. This here was built back in 2002. It was designed especially for the trams. The brainstorm behind that design as well was John Britton. So also home to our booking office out on our right hand side. If you want to book any of our other attractions as well. Just rolling into stop 1. I just need to wait on a new driver here for a few minutes so I can head off and have some lunch.
It was good to see the spirit and the resilience of the people, and there's perhaps a lesson in it there for all of us, that we're going through similar sort of major traumas that are pretty substantial in our way of life, but it does get better, and you do get to a point. It may take years. We're fortunate we haven't lost the infrastructure. We've lost people, but we haven't lost the infrastructure, so the rebuilding isn't going to take as long, I don't think, but it can be better, and I think we've got signs now that it will be better. We're all getting jabbed up, and there is a sign that things are on receding, at least in terms of spread of virus. So I think that was really the message that I thought struck me out of this whole thing, and why I put the video in, that it may seem pretty awful, but other people have just as big a traumas as we are having, and they get over it. Things move on in the future, and hopefully we can all soon start and get out and about in the summer this year, have a decent holiday and get back to normal. Hope it was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll hopefully be making something next week. I'll see you then. Bye.